Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Oh, hello. Didn't hear you come in. There have been many different writers in the world of literature. Robert Frost, Ernest Hemingway, and Sylvia Plath, just to name a few. But if there is one writer that has been talked about to death, it's Edgar Allan Poe. And that's understandable. The man was both a legend and insane, so there is a lot that has been said about him, so much so that I doubt I could bring anything new to this video. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try. This is the story of Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe was born in 1809 in Boston, Massachusetts. Both his parents were actors who worked for a repertory theater company in Boston. Unfortunately, both his parents died before he was even 3 years old, and Poe was sent to live in Richmond, Virginia with John Allan, who never formally adopted Poe as his son.
Poe attended the best schools that were available to him and was admitted into the University of West Virginia in 1825. It was here that Poe was able to distinguish himself academically. Unfortunately, due to bad debts and inadequate funds from his foster father, Poe was forced to drop out of the university the following year.
Poe's relationship with Allan disintegrated upon his return to Richmond in 1827. Soon afterwards, he left Richmond to join the army. That same year, his first poetry collection, Tamerlane and Other Poems, was published. Unfortunately, it went unnoticed. In 1829, Poe's second collection, Al-Arif, Tamerlane, and Minor Poems was published, and while it received slightly more attention from readers than his first collection did, it didn't do much better.
Poe was honorably discharged from the army that same year, having attained the rank of Regimental Sergeant Major. He was then admitted into the United States Military Academy. Unfortunately, Poe's foster father would not provide him with enough money to support himself as a cadet, nor would he give him the consent to resign from the army. Therefore, he got himself dismissed by neglecting his duties.
Poe subsequently moved to New York City, where he published his third collection of poems, simply titled Poems, in 1831. After that, he moved to Baltimore with his Aunt Maria Clem and cousin Virginia, whom he would later marry in 1836. It was in Baltimore that Poe's writing began to gain more attention as his short stories started appearing in the Philadelphia's Saturday Corridor, and his short story M.S. Found in a Bottle winning a cash prize. The following year, Poe accepted an editorship at the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond. This would be the first of several literary journals he would direct over the next 10 years, allowing his popularity to grow and his work to receive the attention it deserved.
Poe was able to establish himself not only as an amazing author and poet, but as a literary critic whose level of imagination was unheard of during the Victorian era. Unfortunately, Poe would lose his wife in 1847 to tuberculosis, and from that point onward, it was all downhill for Edgar Allan Poe.
Following his wife's death, Poe was in numerous relationships, but while he was preparing for his second marriage, suddenly, under unexplained circumstances, he fled to Baltimore in September of 1849. In October of that year, he was found in a semi-conscious state and died 4 days later without any explanation about what had happened.
Poe is perhaps best remembered today for his horror-themed poems, such as The Fall of the House of Usher, The Pit and the Pendulum, and, of course, The Raven. He is also well remembered by most literary critics as the forerunner of the art for art's sake movement during the Victorian era. And while it's unfortunate that his mental health ultimately resulted in his death, at least he left behind a legacy that will never die.